Big love to Zack Snyder. He's a legend and a madman. I really like that guy.
Get ready to receive some Holy Spirit.
Now, I like to think that I'm a pretty fair guy when it comes to talking about movies, although I have some pretty clear bias that I'm sure you guys are aware of. I'm harsh on the MCU because of a lot of the mediocre projects they've been putting out over the years, and I do tend to like DC-related media more, and there are certain filmmakers that I tend to favor because I like their work and their style, like James Wan, Guy Ritchie, Martin Scorsese, Edgar Wright, and of course, Zack Snyder. Particularly in those videos when I talk about these certain filmmakers, I usually always mention that I'm a big fan of their work, so that does skew my opinion a bit, but that's how a lot of people are, so what can you do? I at least try to be upfront with it. Now I figured, hell, I might as well put on my fanboy hat and take a few minutes to talk about Zack Snyder's newest movie, Rebel Moon. It's really just gonna be the little information that we do know about it, who the cast is, who's working on it, and might as well show some of the concept art that's been released. It's really been a while since I actually talked about Zack Snyder because he's been a busy boy. Late 2020 and early 2021, when he was finishing up the Snyder Cut, he was also in post-production for Army of the Dead, and both of those movies released last year. And then later that year, he was a producer on the prequel movie, Army of Thieves, so he was also a bit involved in that. Then while all that was happening, he was planning his next set of movies. Currently at the moment, he is filming Rebel Moon to be released next year, along with its sequel, because it's going to be a two-parter. Then there's a sequel to Army of the Dead called Planet of the Dead that he also has to film. And then there's the prequel animated series for Army of the Dead called Lost Vegas, which has also been in the works. We're going to get a lot of Snyder projects in the next few years on Netflix, so I'm definitely looking forward to all that. But while we're here, let's talk about what we know about his next movie, Rebel Moon. So best to start from the beginning and just tell you what Rebel Moon is about. It's pretty simple. It's a sci-fi about a peaceful colony getting taken over by a tyrannical army, and a woman must go out into the galaxy and seek help and put together a team to help push back the army to free the colony from its rule. Pretty straightforward stuff. So that's the general idea of the movie, but I want to talk briefly about the history of the movie, because it's a pretty interesting story. So this was an idea that Zack Snyder had back in 2011, and he actually pitched it to Lucasfilms as a Star Wars movie. They turned it down, of course, and then they were sold to Disney not long after. I think it's pretty interesting that he held on to this idea for over a decade so far. This is similar to Army of the Dead, where he had the idea for that film since 2009. Because if you didn't know, Zack Snyder did a 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead, and he was always interested in going back to the zombie genre, and 15 years later, he did that. This is one incredibly patient man. Now, I think Rebel Moon not being attached to Star Wars is for the better, because it gives him much more creative freedom, because it's going to have its own universe and continuity, and won't be restricted by the lore and what was already established in previous movies. So now it doesn't have to try to fit itself into the world of Star Wars, it can just be its own thing. And like I mentioned earlier, this will be a two-part movie, which they are currently filming back to back. They started filming about a month ago, and they won't wrap up until this November, so prepare for an epic sci-fi space adventure. Now, Snyder hasn't done a full-blown sci-fi film, but if you remember Man of Steel, the intro on Krypton was pretty sci-fi heavy, so maybe that's a glimpse of what we can expect. Or hell, maybe it'll be vastly different from that, who knows. So now we know what it's about, let's talk about who's in it and who's working on it. Months ago we had a huge cast reveal, and then even more while they were filming. But let's start with who's behind the camera. Of course we got Zack Snyder as the director, and one of the producers and writers. But also as co-writers we have Shay Hatton and Kurt Johnstad. No idea if I said those names right. Now Shay Hatton has worked on John Wick 3, as well as the fourth one that's coming out, as well as the Army of the Dead and Army of Thieves. And as for Kurt Johnstad, he worked on the 2-300 movies, Act of Valor, and Atomic Blonde. And in front of the camera we basically know most of the cast. They were announced earlier this year. Sophia Boutella is the lead. We also got Corey Stoll, Jamin Hansu, Charlie Hunnam, and Ray Fisher. Those are the actors that I'm familiar with, and most recently, Anthony Hopkins will be lending his voice for a character. And of course, there are plenty more that we know about, but I'm not going to pretend like I know who they are, but I will show them on screen. So we know who's working on the story, who's directing it, who's going to star in it, but no idea who's going to be composing the music yet. I've heard rumors of like Junkie XL, because him and Snyder are really close and work together on BVS and the Snyder Cut. I also heard rumors of Hans Zimmer, for similar reasons, because him and Snyder have worked together already, but also Hans Zimmer did the music for Dune, which is also a sci-fi film, so a lot of people think that he'll be a good fit for Rebel Moon because of that. But as of right now, we're just going to have to keep our ears open for an update in the music department. Now, as of this recording, there's no new information besides a makeup test and Anthony Hopkins being announced. Before that, it was just set photos and a few pictures and some concept art. This movie and I believe the follow-up are both slated to be released in 2023. And there are rumors bubbling that there is a theatrical release planned, which is something that Netflix does every now and again. They did it for Army of the Dead. They had a very limited release. Now, if it is true that it's going to get a theatrical release, would definitely prefer it on a larger scale instead of just select theaters. That way I can actually go see it. Now, me being a big fan, I'm really excited to see that Snyder is working on many different projects. And I think he's in a much better place now than he was at Warner Brothers. And from what I can tell, a lot of people seem to be enjoying the projects that he's worked on over there. Army of the Dead made it on Netflix top 10 most streamed movies, with it being streamed in over 72 million households. And the prequel movie, Army of Thieves, also did pretty damn well streaming wise, coming the #1 most streamed movie in over 90 countries. So I imagine this makes Netflix pretty damn happy. I mean, hell, he has future projects planned with them. Now, I'll be real with you guys. For as much as I love Zack Snyder's DC movies, I understand there are many out there who just don't. And clearly many people at Warner Brothers didn't either. And I'll always find it funny to ratio a Warner Brothers or HBO Max post with Snyderverse related comments. And I would love to see them let Snyder make a part 2 Justice League movie, but if that never happens, I'm more than happy watching Snyder's own projects unrelated to DC. And honestly, I think he kind of prefers it too, because he's given much more creative freedom than he ever was at Warner Brothers. And for a guy who's been treated poorly by a studio as big as Warner Bros., he's actually been very calm about it and not irate.
Warner Brothers has been aggressively anti-Snyder, if you will. And that's, what can you say? What can I say?
I mean, at most, there was that skit he did with Stephen Colbert.
Suck it, Warner Brothers.
Wow. His words, not mine. But yeah, second Warner Brothers.
It's kind of like how I feel about David Ayer's Suicide Squad. I really like David Ayer. I like a lot of his movies. And I would definitely like to see his cut of the 2016 Suicide Squad movie with its original structure, original music, its original ending, and all the scenes they took out and changed. And if you actually don't know anything about David Ayer's Suicide Squad, I did a video about it a while back discussing several of the differences. So go ahead and check that out if you want more information. But my point is this. Even though I think it sucks that their movie got fucking butchered by the studio, and then they got chewed up and spit out by them, and I would really like to see their vision of the movie, I am also equally happy that they are currently working on other projects, outside of just the ones associated with Warner Brothers and DC. And I'll continue to support them by checking out their other work. I mean, since the 2016 Suicide Squad, David Ayer has made several other movies, some of them not that great, and he's currently filming another one he hasn't announced yet. So I'm happy that he's still in the film industry, doing what he loves to do. And I feel the same exact way with Zack Snyder. I mean, he's clearly doing very well for himself, so I don't think he's missing Warner Brothers at all. Now, I'm not sure what the future of DC looks like just yet. We'll have to wait till Black Adam, Aquaman 2, Shazam 2, and The Flash comes out to really see what direction they're going to go in. If Snyder never touches a DC or comic book movie again, as long as he's putting out other projects, then hey, I'm happy. But who knows, maybe in the future there might be an opportunity for him to do Justice League Part 2. But he has a lot on his plate, and even though he's very passionate about those DC movies, I'm not sure if he'll let it take priority over his own personal projects that he's already got lined up. I mean, he's got Rebel Moon Part 1 and Part 2, Planet of the Dead after that, and then the Las Vegas animated show is happening in the background. And those are just the ones that we know about. From my understanding, both Army of the Dead and Rebel Moon could have potential spin-offs planned. I mean, they're clearly already building upon Army of the Dead with Army of Thieves, and then the animated prequel show, so they're more likely going to do the same thing with Rebel Moon. It'll be a lot keeping Zack Snyder busy. And yeah, I love the Snyderverse movies too, and definitely want to see a continuation of that story, but if it never happens, there's at least other Snyder projects that I'll be able to watch. But anyway guys, that's going to do it for the video. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, go and drop a like on it. And leave a comment, let me know, what do you think about Rebel Moon? Are you excited for it? Are you skeptical? Leave a comment, let me know. And more importantly, which would you prefer Zack Snyder to do? Focus on his DC projects or his own personal projects? Leave a comment, let me know. In a perfect world, we could have both, you know? But thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.
Big love to Zack Snyder.
Is there anything more depressing than dating in your 30s?
Oh.
Why isn't it possible? It's just not. Why not, you stupid bastard?